Hi, this is Kevin Trainer. Welcome to the tutorial for exercise 2 of the coding assignment for chapter 5 of the Zelle 3E Python book. And here's what we're doing. Uh, we're doing uh, an enhancement of the code that we did in the tutorial for exercise 1. Okay, so in exercise 1, we created a program called Val Analytics, and this one is going to be called Batch Val Analytics. So what do we mean by batch? Well, this is going to use the batch processing pattern that they talk about in our textbook. So instead of doing like one sentence at a time, as typed in by the user is going to point us to a file, and then we're going to analyze each of the sentences in the file. So let's take a look at the file, okay? And that's not really doing what I wanted to do. So here we are. Here's the file. So the file that we're going to be using is called sentences with vowels .txt. Okay. So it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines of input. Okay. Let me make this a little bigger. One of the lines is blank. Okay. So one of the things that is kind of interesting is and I didn't really emphasize this in the last of the tutorials, and I probably should have. What happens if we don't give it any input at all? And let me back up and take a look at that. Okay, let's go back to Val Analytics, okay, which we have here, and we're going to run it. Run Val Analytics, and we're going to say my dog has fleas, and it's going to run it, and it analyzes it. One of the things that you have to ask yourself is it going to give me reasonable input if I don't get reasonable output if I don't give it any input? So let's see if Val Analytics is that robust. So we're going to run it again, and in answer to the prompt, we're just going to press enter, and it says 0 words were analyzed. Well, that's pretty reasonable output. So one of the requirements that we're sort of adding as in the current week is we would like, when we're doing this text processing stuff, if we don't have any input, that the program should give reasonable output and end gracefully, and that one did. Okay, so let's look over here at the one we're trying to figure out. Okay, this blank line is going to be challenging. Okay, this final line, when you kind of understand how text editors work, this final line really isn't here. Okay, it's really a new line character at the end of line 5. There really isn't a line 6. Okay, it's just when you read a file like this when you open it with the text editor, it shows you that you're ready to enter line 6. You can see that the cursor's right at the beginning. But there is a line 3. All it has on it is a new line character. That's going to be challenging. And then apart from that, well, we've got sentences that should work in the code that we already have. So what do we need to do? Well, it looks to me like we need to take the code that we had for Val Analytics and wrap it in a shell that runs the batch part. Okay? No, I've got some pseudocode for that. Now, here's what I'm going to say. If you're a person who likes to sketch up their own pseudocode, all right, well, pause here. And now we're going to unpause. All right. So here's my pseudocode, okay? Uh, I'm going to, instead of prompting the user for a line of text, I'm going to prompt them for the file name so I can open the file, okay? I am going to be counting the lines, okay? So I'm going to count the lines. So I have to set the line count equal to 0. I need to open the input file, okay? And now it turns out that because files are iterable as well, okay, it turns the Zelle book kind of implies that files are Python sequences, and they're not. Python sequences are a very specific thing, and files are sequence-like because they are iterable, and because they are iterable, you can use this for in construct with them. And it makes strings and lists and files very compatible with each other because they're all iterable. Okay, so we're going to say for line and input file, we're going to increment the line count plus equal 1, and then we're just going to put the code from Val Analytics right here. We may have to adjust something, but pretty much that's what we're doing. So when you're kind of upgrading a program from like individual single transaction to batch like this, it's okay to just write the pseudocode for the shell of it. And where your existing code is going to be plopped into the program, well, just say that. Okay, so that's going to be in the loop, and then we're going to print the number of lines that were analyzed, and we're going to close the input file. Okay, well that looks pretty good. All right, so let's get working on that. Okay, so let's create a program here. Now let's get rid of this. Okay, and let's create a new program, a Python file called batch Val Analytics. Okay. And again, I'm not going to have you watch me type. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring over some code, and then we're going to talk our way through it. Okay. All right. So here's my doc string. Read an input file. Analyze words on each line, counting vowels. Okay, that looks good. Okay, now I need to initialize vowels. Okay. Because we're going to have the same code, and we had that up in the top of our code before. Now I'm going to need some things. I'm going to need a way to find my way to the data. Okay, and we're doing something a little different this semester. We're going to put all of our data into a directory, into a sub-directory called data. So we're going to somewhat separate the data from the programs. Okay, well, let's take a pause and see what that's all about. Okay. Now, in a Python program, if you just simply give it a file name when you open the file. Okay, it looks for that file in the same directory that the program is in. Now, sometimes that can get kind of crowded, right? Or sometimes you may want to point it to a whole other part of the file system. Okay, and if you're processing a bunch of files, typically you collect them up in some kind of a directory. Okay, and you want to always point to the files in that directory. Okay, so our data directories, when we create them in our projects in our class, they're always going to be called data. Okay, so how do we create a subdirectory in our project called data? Well, highlight the name of the project, right click, choose new, directory, type in a lowercase data, D-A-T-A, enter. And you can see that now there's a folder here. There aren't any files in it. Okay, so where are we going to get our files? Okay, well, some files the programs are going to create for us. And at other times, we may want to create a text file for data input. So how would we do that? That's probably worth a look. Okay, if we want a new text file, we can just highlight the directory we want it to go in, like data. We can right click and choose new, file, and let's say we're going to call this first sample dot text. First underscore sample dot text. Now, why do we have to tell it what the file extension is? Well, this combination will create any kind of file. So it doesn't know what the extension is. So you need to tell it what the extension is. You need to put the .text on the end of the file name. And now it has opened up an editor for first sample .text. And we can type in, this is my first sample file. Period. Okay, and this is a text file. This is it. And maybe we would put a new line at the end. All right, that's it. That's the way you create a text file. Now, how do you, so let's close that. Okay, and let's go back to the data sub directory. We don't really want this in our project, so we're going to highlight it. We're going to right click and we're going to choose delete. And then we're going to confirm it, and it's gone. So this data subdirectory is empty again. All right. Now, how are we going to find our files? Well, let me show you. So in the current semester for IS430, we're working in week 4, okay? And for the coding assignment, I have starter files for the coding assignment, okay? And you can click on this and download it. So I'm going to click on it and say okay. It wants to send it to download. And then if I come over here, I can see that I got the starter files for chapter 5. And let me make the type on this a little bigger. I thought I had done that the other day for everything, but apparently not. Okay, so that makes it a little bit easier to see. Okay, and here, if I double click on this in my Mac, it's going to open it up. Okay, and so I'm going to have a directory, and if I open that directory, you'll see the files. So these are the files. Okay, so the one that we're going to want for this tutorial if you're following along from home. That file is called sentences with vowels. Okay, so how would I add that to my project? Okay, well, I can right click on sentences with vowels .text and pick copy. And I should be able to go over to PyCharm and uh, highlight the data directory and right click and click paste. Okay, and it says it gives me the opportunity to change the name, but I'm not going to change it. I'm going to click OK. Okay, and then typically it opens the files for you. So this is how you get your data files. Okay, I'm going to give them to you in a starter files. Okay, and you're going to download, and you need to put them in your project, and they need to be included in your project when you submit your project. Well, why is that? Well, we are grading. Let's see. I think we have about 110 students in the current semester who are taking IS430 with me. Okay, we have to grade 110 of every assignment. We can't be pulling the data files into them. They have to be ready to test when we open them. Okay, so you need to have created a data subdirectory and you need all your data files in that. Okay. So let's go back to the batch Val Analytics code and follow along. Okay, so the name of the data directory is hard coded. Why is that? Well, why prompt you for that when, at least in our class, it's not going to change? If you're doing this for yourself as a user or some other user, could you prompt for the path for the data directory? Sure, you could. All right, we're just going to hard code ours. Okay, and then we're going to prompt the user, please enter the name of the file to be analyzed. Okay, and then what we need to do is we need to create a combination of the path and the file name for this input file. So I call this infile, path, and file name. And how do we do this? Well, the way that I used to do these things is I used to use the plus operator, the concatenation operator. But these days, the preferred way to combine strings is with F strings. So here's what we do. We create an F string and we have the data directory name on the left part. We have a regular slash, a right slash in the middle, regardless of the operating system that you're on, either the Mac or Linux or Windows, it's always a right slash, and then the input file name. So then when we do the open, we pass it the in file path and file name and the character R that says that we want to open it in read mode. Okay, so this kind of construct, okay, where you build the path and file name like this, and then you eventually open the file. This is going to be pretty standard stuff for us. If we only have an input file, then we're only going to do it from the input file. Later on, when we have an output file as well, we'll have a set of instructions like this to for the input file, and then we'll have a set for the output file too. Okay, so this is the beginning of the shell that's going to go around our code. Let's look at a little bit of the rest of it. Okay. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to say, this. Sorry for the delay. I just had to find the code to copy it over. Okay, so we're going to do this. So we're going to say for line and in file, and then we're going to print with the backslash line in the beginning, so we get a blank line. Analyzing, okay. Isn't that interesting? This should be an F string. Okay, so let me fix this, and you'll see what this is supposed to be. Okay, so pay no attention to what I had, because I should have fixed that. Okay, I've got that. So now we have a proper F string. So that was the old way that I used to format these things. Okay, and it's not the way that I format them anymore. So really, any combination of variables and characters, I always do with the F string. So what does this say? Well, I skip a line, that's the backslash n, and then I have analyzing, colon, space, and then I'm going to take the line of text, okay, and what does this slice expression mean? Well, it means this. Start from the beginning of the string, so I don't have any entry for the beginning of the slice. I could have said 0 here, okay? But if you just want to say the beginning, you can leave it blank. And what does -1 mean? It says don't include the last character of the line. Okay, so what we're doing is we're telling the user what the line of text is that we're analyzing, because the user's not typing it in anymore, right? And because they're not typing it in anymore, we can't see what's being analyzed. So we have to print it explicitly. Okay, now why not print the final character? Well, so the final character is a new line. Okay, that skips a line. Our print is going to add a new line. Okay, if we don't eliminate the final character in the line that we're reading, it's going to be double spaced. We don't want it to be double spaced. We want to skip a line before we start, but we don't want it to be double spaced. Okay, so let's look back here. Okay, we prompted for the file name. We got the line count. We opened the file. For line and input file, we need to increase the line count by 1, and we want to include the code from Val Analytics right here. Okay, now did we do that? Well, let's bring over this code. Okay, so we're bringing over, we're increasing the line count. We didn't have to do that before. Okay, we already have line. Okay, the first of the things that we need to do is, actually, I'm just going to go and open Val Analytics, and I'm going to copy that code in. Okay, and you'll see what this is. Okay. It's right here. Okay. So this is it. Okay. So it began with the lower. Okay. Then we had the split. Okay. Then we had a print because we wanted to position ourselves away from the rest of this stuff, and then we ran around and we analyzed all these. Okay. Now, we have a lot of code in here. We haven't done any testing. Probably not a good idea. Okay. But whenever you realize that, it's time to test. All right. Now, you know what we haven't done? We haven't put in the call to main. So let's put in the call to main. All right. So let's see how this looks. Oh, we need 2 blank lines before it, right? Okay. So this looks pretty good. Let's see. We print the line. Okay. We add 1 to the line count. We shift the line to lowercase because we still need to do this because working with text and alphabetics. Okay. Oh, this is interesting. We want it, I did this twice, so I've got 2 different versions of this. So let's get rid of that. Okay. No, I'm sorry. I'm going nuts. I didn't do it twice. Sorry, sorry, folks. Yeah. So I added 1 to the line count. I shifted the line to lower. Now I split it. Okay. Since there's no argument to split, it's going to do it on space. And this is just the code that we had before. It says skip a line, and then away we go. I don't think we're going to need to skip this line. We'll look, but I'm thinking not. Let's take this out. Okay. There we go. Let's give it a run. Okay. So we're going to run it. So what's the name of the input file? Well, sentences with vowels text. Sentences with vowels text. This looks very promising. Let's look at this. Okay. So it says analyzing how now brown cow. So how now brown cow. That's all good. Analyzing. This was the blank line. It didn't do anything bad. Okay. It hasn't told us how many words were analyzed though. Okay. The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog. That looks right. Now is the time for all good women to come to the aid of their country. That looks right. Wet birds never fly at night. Yeah, that looks right too. Okay. So, what else do we need? Well, we need to say, how many words were analyzed. Okay. So let's bring that over. All right. So that's going to go right after this. Now, do we want to say that every time through the loop? Let's see. Let's figure this out. For word and words, no, we don't. We want to do this for the line of text. So we want this to be out here. A lot of times I like a blank line in front of that. Okay. All right, so we've added that. And let's go look at this. So let's run this again. Sentences with vowels. Dot text. And let's look at this. All right, this is looking good. Okay, so it gets down to the end. It says 4 words are analyzed, 1, 2, 3, 4. Look at this, the blank line, 0 words were analyzed. So the really nice thing here is that we're treating a blank line appropriately. We're analyzing nothing, okay? And it says we analyze 0 words. So one of the really nice things about for in is it's very robust with respect to empty input. Okay, so you say for line in file. If in file is empty, it acts appropriately. We say for word in words. If words is empty, if there are no words in words, it acts appropriately. What happens is it doesn't do the body of the loop even once. Okay, so that's why we really like this for in iterable construct. Okay, all right, so let's go back and look at the results. That's good. The only thing we need left is we need to say how many lines we processed, and we need to close the file. Okay, so let's bring in those two. Okay, so we're going to bring those in the end. Okay, so why do we close files? We're closing files because it's a good citizen thing to do. It's the polite thing to do. So in terms of input files, if you don't close them in a big programming environment where your programs combine with other programs, the big programming environment starts to lose memory. We get this thing called a memory leak. With output files, it's even worse. If you don't close an output file, it won't flush out the last couple of lines that you wrote onto the disk. So our rules are always close whatever files we open, close them before the end of the program. Okay? All right, now this looks good. Let's look at the program as a whole. All right. Okay, so we have all this kind of initialization and open the files. And then we have a big loop, okay, that does these things for every line in the file. And then we say how many lines we processed, and then we close it. Now, I'm just going to give you a foreshadowing of where we're going soon. Can you notice that all this code in main barely fits on the screen? I mean, you might say that's because I skipped so many blank lines for drama, but even with that, we're starting to get to the point where main has more than a page of code. Okay, that's starting to get too long. When we get to chapter 6 and we start talking about functions, we're going to start seeing that we're going to want to take our code and we're going to want to factor it out into subfunctions. And that's one of the reasons we might do that is because it's getting a little too long, right? We're not quite there yet. This is still okay, but it's the edge of okay. All right. So there's all the code. And now let's run a test of it. Let's run another test. And this is called sentences with vowels .text. And we look at this all together. And it's doing the same thing, but we've got the final thing. 5 lines were analyzed from the file sentences with vowels .text. And I just want to point out that these messages where you say how many records you processed and where you got the data from. They're really informative to the users. They're especially going to be informative when we go on, and the majority of our output is not going to be going to the console. It's going to be going to another text file, an output text file. So we're going to want to know, well, what happened? So having a message that prints before we're done with the program that kind of summarizes where we got the data from and maybe where the data went to and how many lines we processed makes it real easy to debug the program. But once you get that going, it makes it really easy for the user to understand the workflow. Okay, so it's very good documentation to whoever's using the program to get their job done. Okay, so that's it. And if we go back and we look at our pseudocode, we took care of all the pseudocode, and we only had to create the pseudocode for the batch shell that we included this. That we we just took the code that we already had and we just made it a line in our pseudocode. But we were able to use the pseudocode to design the shell for the batch processing. Okay, so that's this for this. Now, I want to point out one other thing. So when you go to do your homework, right? You go to do your coding assignment. There are going to be starter files that you're going to need, okay? And you're going to do the same thing. Again, if you don't already have a data sub directory, you're going to create that. And then you're going to take the starter file and you're going to copy it from where you download it to. And then you're going to paste it into the data sub directory, and that's how you're going to get that done. All right, that's it for me. I'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.